Welcome to the program. Before we get into our conversations tonight, let's start with some cheering news set to bring a sigh of relief to Nigerians. For the first time in 28 years, Nigeria has begun producing its petrol thanks to Dangote refinery in Lagos State. The 650,000 barrel per day facility owned by Aliko Dangote has just completed test production and is ready to start sales immediately. Well, this development comes on a day when Nigerians have woken up to yet another increase in fuel prices and the now familiar sight of endless queues at petrol stations. The news from Dangote's camp couldn't come at a more critical time, promising not only to ease the current scarcity, but also to save the country billions in foreign exchange and ensure a more stable supply of petrol for businesses and homes.
Well, this represents, a very historic, monumental, achievement, which I think I must congratulate the people of Nigeria and the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for giving us all the support to be where we are today. This achievement, really, you are right, in the last 28 years, we haven't really had this sort of achievement, but you can see that even there are some videos of 1974, which we have fuel queues, and those fuel queues that are still here. This will eliminate all fuel queues in Nigeria.
Good news indeed. We'll live to see that day. But like I said earlier, that assurance comes as fuel queues resurface on streets around Nigeria. The long queues at filling stations across the country have been further worsened by reports of pump price of fuel being hiked to over 800 naira. In places like Maiduguri in Borno State, fuel is being sold between 950 and 1,200 naira per litre. Some stations in Kaduna are selling as high as 1,300 or 1,400 naira per litre.
Unfortunately, we don't know about the increasing of the fuel prices because we are behind. Our expectation, we think that they are selling the fuel, getting rich later on around 8 o'clock. We now ask the management. They say that there's going to be a changing of price, and then we have been here since morning till now. Nobody should come and address us. We are expecting the manager should come and address us. If they are not selling, let them tell us so that we can make move to another places.
The situation at Tanda is very annoying. You understand? Because right from when fuel was 190 something naira per litre, that was the last administration. You understand? President Muhammad Buhari, we are complaining. You understand? That time there was queue, but open that when they remove the subsidy, there will not be queue. But we still find the same situation we are at 195 than 700 naira per litre. Now we heard this morning that NNPC is selling about 8 something per litre, while other marketers are selling 1,000 plus. Even this filling station now totally is no one is selling. And it's very annoying that the country that God blessed with mineral resources, we have the fuel, you understand, we are suffering and we are passing through a hell.
The situation is very critical. We are here since morning. No fuel to buy, and they say they want to change a fuel price. Let them change the price so that we can get fuel and buy. Even though it is 1,000 naira or 1,500, let them change the price. We go buy. It's not fair. And now, we are here since morning. We didn't even get hope whether we can even get the fuel to buy. They will remain here.
Not only a heartbreaking but frustrating situation here in Nigeria with petrol queues. Now, while Nigerians are grappling with fuel crisis, President Bola Tinubu is seeking foreign direct investment. The president is currently on a 5-day working visit to China, where he witnessed the signing alongside his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping, the signing of 5 key memorandums of understanding. The agreements aim to boost cooperation in critical areas including infrastructure, agriculture and digital economy. Well, this visit comes at a critical time as Nigerians at home, like I said, are facing significant economic challenges, including that worsening fuel crisis that has strained household budgets and increased the cost of living. While the government hopes these agreements will bring much needed investment and relief, many are questioning whether this trip will truly address the pressing issues facing Nigerians today.
We need to anchor this, I agree with you, that China-Nigerian relations that is over half a century should further strengthen our trade and economic development program. Nigeria has a very great potential as largest population in Africa and is the biggest economy. A very young population to drive the economic development and programs.
And in addition to statements of joint mutual interest and commitments to development, security, and undertaking to work together for the betterment of Nigeria, Africa, and to partake in global development, specific agreements were signed, memorandum of understanding. 5 are all development related. 4 of them were were signed on behalf of the Chinese government by the National Reform and Development, the National Development and Reform Commission of China, and I also signed on behalf of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Equally, there's one agreement with the China International Development Agency, as well as Nigeria. Again, I signed on behalf of Nigeria. These 5 agreements are all developmental in nature.
Nigeria's Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Gadu, speaking there in Beijing after signing the Memorandum of Understanding. For more on this, I'm being joined by Ilyasu Gadu, a former Nigerian Foreign Service officer. He served as information attaché in the Nigerian missions in former West Germany and the United Kingdom. Thank you so much for being on the show tonight.
Thank you very much. Good evening, viewers. I'm happy to be here.
Great. We're happy to have you. Shall we begin with how this visit is being described, particularly after the events of today, it's been described. Both countries say, well, according to the Nigerian presidency in their statement, they say both countries have just elevated their relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership. What exactly does that mean in practical terms for Nigeria and for China?
Well, our relationship with China has been ongoing now for since 1971, when we, opened up diplomatic relations after the Civil War. And China has been a very, very important partner for Nigeria in terms of developmental needs and all that, and support politically too, because China is both economic power and a political power. So China is one of those countries that Nigeria, keys into in terms of needs, requirements for its development. The high point of our relationship with China was during the Buhari regime, when we had signed several agreements across infrastructure and all kinds of things. And it's good that the Tinubu administration is continuing in that respect, because there's a lot to gain from that relationship. There's a lot to even expand more, because China has opened up its developmental assistance through the Belt and Road Initiative and other initiatives to be able to help the world. And Nigeria, as Mr. President said, is a very important partner that China needs to have on its diplomatic pouch and also developmental pouch, so that we can extend the relationship beyond what we are doing right now.
You sort of describe this as a win-win for both countries, but even today we had the Nigerian delegation say China has indicated interest to increase trade, so to balance, the trade between Nigeria and the country. One will wonder, is this relationship that you talk about, that has spanned several decades, is it mutually beneficial in true terms? I mean, does Nigeria get out as much as China gets from this relationship?
Well, let me just say this. In international relations, you get what you negotiate. Nobody gives you everything. You have to negotiate what we want, and you have to be able to know what you want before you approach development partners. Development partners would not be there, thinking for you, doing things for you. You have to be able to be ready with what you want, and when you meet them across the table, you'd have been able to marshal out where areas in which you need assistance and how to get those assistance. Now, I do not think that we have expanded that area in Nigeria here. So yes, China is ready to help assist us in all kinds of things, but it also behoves on us to know what kind of assistance we can get out of this and how to get out of it. That is what I talk about when I said you get what you negotiate. The Chinese will not be thinking for us. We want railways, yes, we want infrastructure, roads, and all kinds of things. The Chinese are there, they have it, first-class cutting-edge infrastructure, and they can survive, they can supply it. But then it is us to say what kind of support we need and how to get it, and the tempo and the tenor.
And for those who have watched this space keenly, they say this is not mutually beneficial, and some will also describe it as the death trap diplomacy of China. I wonder if you agree with them. They say it's not beneficial because when you look at in terms of jobs, it's creating more jobs for the Chinese rather than for the Nigerians, where the construction and expansion is taking place.
Yeah, well, you see, as I said again, you get what you negotiate. When you go to the table to sit down and discuss with the Chinese or any other development partner, you need to be able to know, marshal out what you want. You could say, look, yes, this is the tenor of the relationship we want. We want you to build infrastructure, we want you to build roads, but we want our people to be part of that development.
Why do you think we haven't negotiated in that stance? Why do you think we are faltered?
Yeah, because you see, as I said, again, there is a Chinese saying, if you know your own strength and your weaknesses, you will also be able to know how to deal with your partners. So it's the preparation in-house must be ours. Would we want this development because we want to develop our country, or do we want to just give out contracts and out of that, that's it? So that is where a lot of countries around the world try to build the infrastructure development, try to build, national development into infrastructure development, so that their own people at the end of the day would gain from what is happening, and they can take over those development initiatives and then also build from there. I don't think we have that, because we believe that it's all about arranging contracts and all that. We need to go beyond that thinking. We need to be able to say, look, yes, we want you to build a road from point A to point B, but along the line, our people will be part of that. They will be part of the construction. They will be part of what's going on, so that along the line, they can get enough knowledge about it, and also be the ones to build the next set of development, the next set of infrastructure. That is how it's done. You have to take it. If in the first stage, initial stage, you don't have this, by the time you finish that stage, you're able to have at least a pool of people to be able to help you build the next infrastructure. That's how development is done in other countries, not here.
Indeed. And some people will say China is already heavily involved in Nigeria's infrastructure, from railways to digital technology. But do you see this deepening partnership? I mean, in addition with what President Bola Tinubu's administration is now trying to do during that official visit, will it deepen the relationship as a net positive for Nigeria? Because you've talked about our lack of negotiating skills when it comes to this agreement. Do you see anything different that will happen this time around? And is there a risk of overdependence on China's investment? Let's also put into consideration the geopolitics, the scrabble for Africa. Is China trying to root itself, strongly as the U.S. and the West try to catch up with what it's doing on the continent?
China, as you and I know, is I would put the point, aggressively presenting itself to the world, which is quite normal for any country that has such developmental aspirations. It's not just trying to get to the world economically, but it's also political. It wants to be able to have a say in what is happening around the world. And these are the initiatives. Behind these initiatives, of course, there are political initiatives. That should be understood. But it's not up to us to tell China what to do. It's up to us to look at the opportunities that we can glean out of this. First of all, what do we want our relationship to be with China? We want development. We want them to assist us with infrastructure. We want them to assist us. Let's even expand the scope, because what we have with China today is not even enough. We need to have much more than what we're having with China.
Such as?
Such as telecommunications, for instance. China has a cutting-edge telecommunications. We need to have, even the infrastructure is not even enough. I mean, railways, for instance, we need to have agreements with China to be able to build railways that will cover the major cities, not just Abuja, Kano, but all the major cities like Aba, Onitsha, and the rest of them. We need to be able to open ourselves up and say this is what we want. Because look, China itself did that. It closed itself for some time during the Mao time, and then when it came to the time of Deng Xiaoping, it now looked out to the world, and that's what they call Great Leap Outward. Now, with that, it opened itself. That is when it encouraged companies from America, from Germany, from Britain to get in there and take advantage of what's happening. And of course, they reverse engineered some of those things that they got from these countries and set up basis for their own expansion into the world. That is what we need. We need to think big and think more than what we are thinking now. We should not think in small ways. We think in big ways. Think big, act big, and get big. That is what we should do, because China itself went through that part, and we should be able to also go through that, but with our own plans, because China has to need a country like Nigeria. And
I will come to that comparison, because interesting, President Bola Tinubu made that comparison today while speaking with his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping. But I want to talk about, us expanding this relationship and, not limiting our scope when it comes to China, and bring back that question of the fears of the risk of over-dependence on Chinese investment. Do you believe there's anything like that? There are those who say we are overly dependent on China.
Look, I don't think we should be able to, we should really stay along with that kind of thinking. If you want to get anything from the world, you have to think first about your own strengths, your own weaknesses, and make sure that whatever, because you cannot close yourself out from the world. China is out there, we take advantage. There are certain things about us and China that they will never know. And there are certain things about them that we will never know. But you have to leverage on your own strengths, get what you can. If you go out into the world thinking you are weak, somebody is going to take after you, take advantage of you, you will not start, because the world there is about risks. And every country that needs to develop has to have risks, but it also have to have sharp brains to be able to know manage those risks that come from this development. That is what is lacking in our development approach with all the countries, not just China, but most of the countries. And we think that those countries will think for us. They will not. We will have to think for ourselves. We will have to think about the weaknesses involved in what we are relating with these countries, and we have to be able to see how we can maximize those risks and get something out of it.
I'm underlining the word sharp brains, and I'll come back to that. But like I said earlier, President Bola Tinubu drew a parallel between his economic reforms and those of President Xi in China, particularly in tax and tariffs across sectors of the economy. But is this a realistic parallel comparison that the president has made, or are we looking at two very different contexts? When you talk about, China has done it, we can do it.
Yeah, well, I think we shouldn't overreach ourselves. China and Nigeria definitely are operating on different planes. I mean, this is the second largest economy. It's galloping at a pace that is quite tremendous, and very soon China is, going to have a sharp, this thing in the world. We shouldn't be talking in those terms, because they are, first of all, a communist country with communist way of doing things, even though, of course, there are lots of, capitalistic ways of doing this. But we should not compare ourselves so much with China. We should not always, like to think we are going to align ourselves or think that we are like the Chinese. No, there are certain things about us that are within us. There are certain things about China that is within the China. There are systems, and our systems are quite different. But that doesn't mean that we cannot cooperate, we cannot get together. And in this case, well, yes, they do have their own reform system. They do have their own, economic, targets and all that. But don't forget, China is a first-rate economy. China is a technical economy. China is an economy that can solve a lot of its problems within itself. We do not even have issues. We have not been able to even solve problems on power, on telecommunications, technical issues and all that. So we should be able to be a bit realistic, and instead of putting ourselves on the same pedestal with China. That would not get us anywhere, because at the end of the day, when the chips are down, the Chinese are far ahead of us. But we can also leverage on the fact that we have some things that the Chinese would look for. We are the largest economy in Africa. We are the so-called...
We've got the population.
We've got the population. We have a young population. We are the bellwether economy in Africa. it is here that would likely be the hub of West Africa and perhaps the whole of Africa. So there's a lot of scope, but we have to take it, gently by gently, and also to be able to calibrate this relationship in a way that would not make us fall over in the process of trying to get this. We have to be smart. If we were not smart before, we have to be smart now.
Okay, so I get you. We have to be smart. You talk about sharp brains, and I want to come back to that because I believe you mean competence and capability of the people we put in charge of our affairs. And looking at this administration, do you have the faith and the belief that we have those you refer to as sharp brains, those who have the capability and potential to strike such conversations and negotiations when they go to places like China?
Well, it is understood that Nigerians are sharp people. I mean, all over the world. When I mean sharp, I'm not talking about in pejorative terms.
Yeah.
I'm talking about in ability the capacity to be able to do things. I mean, in Nigeria, you can never catch Nigerians unguarded.
Indeed.
Because everything you know about the world today, Nigerians are there. They probably, wherever they are, they're probably ahead or at least about. So when you have people, you give them the drive, you actually create the enabling environment for them, they can get you those things you are looking for. And that is to say, you negotiate. I keep saying you negotiate what you want. In international circles, you get what you negotiate. If you do not negotiate well by understanding what are the trends in the world today, you get left behind. Fortunately, we have those people. In fact, you don't even need to go anywhere within any radius in Nigeria, whether it's in Lagos, Port Harcourt, Abuja, whatever. You'll get guys who will be able to tell you, on this issue, I know how it's done and how we can leverage on it. They don't have to wear sharp suits or sharp this and like that, but they have sharp brains. And these are the kind of people we should be able to cultivate and say, look, these are the things we want to do with China. Can you please, give us your own perspective on it? Reverse engineer some of these things, because this is what happens. The Chinese themselves did it. They are attracted investment from the IBMs of this world, from the Apple of this world, from all of them, and then set their men to sharp brains to be able to reverse engineer these things. So today, yes, they needed the foreigners to come in and invest in their country, but while they were doing that, they were setting their sharp guys to understand these systems and then reverse engineer it for the sake of China. That's what happened in Japan too. With the Toyotas of this world and the rest of them. That is why we need to do it.
Great. So you talked about, very quickly as we round up, reverse engineering, sharp brains, smart negotiation skills. But if there was one thing that China has done, in your perspective, that we haven't done yet, what would that be that we should prioritize to get to where China is? I know you've said we'll take baby steps and don't put ourselves on the same pedestal with China, but I mean, we can only hope and think for the future. What is that one thing we need to do?
It's still on the path of the smartness. Let me tell you what the Chinese did. When they send their students out to the world, to the technical universities around the world, the IBM, the Silicon areas, they tell them, don't show your sharpness there. Just behave dumb.
Is that a policy?
It's a policy, yes. Don't just behave dumb. These guys don't think we are smart. So just behave dumb. But look out for all the things, cutting edge things. When you come here, come and replicate it here. So that's what we need to do. We need in the next 20 or 40 years to have our own people running our trains. When we bring in the Chinese, because the basis for most technological developments is the same. It's just what the emphasis you place, and that's why you need the smartness.
So like a sponge, just keep soaking it up.
Yes.
We have to thank you so much for being on the show today. A former Nigerian Foreign Service Officer, Ilyasu Gadu. He also served as an information attaché in the Nigerian missions in the former West Germany and the United Kingdom. Thank you so much
I'm
for
glad
your
to
time.
be here. Thank you very much for the perspective.